Hi, everybody. My name is Emily Williams, and I am the owner of Champion Mindset Consulting, LLC. Today, I want to talk to you about sports psychology and mental coaching, give you a little bit of background on what it is, the skills that are taught, how it helps, and why it's important for all athletes to really be incorporating into their training regimen. So first things first, if you are an athlete, if you were an athlete, if you know an athlete, you have probably heard somebody say after a really great performance, I don't know what just happened. I was just in the zone. And a lot of athletes will describe that space as kind of everything happening on autopilot. They're not nervous. They're not overthinking things. Everything's just simply going right. Everything is going the way that they want it to. And that is that prime spot mentally for an athlete to be in order to have those great performances. The thing is usually that kind of happens randomly. They don't typically have control over when they get into the zone. They just happen to get into the zone. And it is a real place, and you can train your mind to get into the zone. And when you learn how to train your mind to do that, you can start having those really great performances consistently, time after time. So first things first, sports psychology. The first thing that I want to address is sometimes when people hear the word psychology, they kind of back up a little bit. A lot of people don't truly actually know what mental coaching is. And so if they hear sports psychology, because there is a stigma associated with that word, although I do feel like we are in the middle of the times that is now changing, which is fantastic. It's still there, and people don't want, oh, my friends are going to think I'm weird if I do that, or they're going to think something's wrong with me, or I have a problem. No athlete wants to admit that something is wrong. And really, that's not what this is even about. So mental coaching has nothing to do with mental health in the sense of diagnosable issues such as an eating disorder or depression. This is not a form of treatment for a diagnosable disorder such as those. This is truly training and applied skills that athletes can learn and improve on, which then translates into their sport performance. So really, it should be the opposite. It really should be something that they're proud of, that they are so dedicated to their sport that they're going the extra mile to also train their mind. Sports psychology is not new. It's been around for a really long time. It's just kind of been stuck at the elite level. It's been stuck up there kind of with Olympians and professional athletes. Professional teams have sports psychologists and mental coaches. And as of recently, it's slowly started to trickle down to college age kids and high schoolers and kids younger than high school. And so now that it's becoming a little bit more common to access, people are starting to hear a little bit more about it. Nothing about this means that you are mentally weak. It's truly a form of performance enhancement. And so after I explain some reasons why people might think to begin mental coaching, some of the skills that are involved, it'll make a little bit more sense. So that said, I start working with athletes for a variety of different reasons. People come to me if they're having a mental block with a particular skill that they're working on. They come if they just kind of freeze up during a game or a competition and they can't seem to perform as well under pressure in the moment, but they perform great in practice. Others come because they just like, I want a leg up on my competition. And that's going to be the difference maker. At some point, everybody is going to reach that physical peak. And the difference that's going to separate them is their mental strength. So anybody that has big goals in their sport really truly should be incorporating mental coaching into their training regimen. If somebody is involved in their sport just as something to do, something that is fun, and they don't have those big dreams of going really far with that sport, it's more recreational, then this might not be totally necessary. However, if you're serious about reaching your goals and going far in your sport, this is absolutely something that is crucial. So you can learn so many skills. I will list out just a few and kind of show you what they help with. But the first thing that I do with everybody I work with is I go through an assessment. So we would meet and go through a whole bunch of questions that gives me a good idea of their background, their current situation in their sport, what they're dealing with, what their strengths are, what some of their weaknesses are, and create a plan from there. Once we actually begin true sessions, that's where the fun begins. So first things first, it's so important to do goal setting. And it's so much more than just saying, well, I want to compete on scholarship in college. There's so much more to it. Or I want to go compete in the Olympics. Goal setting is broken down. It is a little bit tedious, but it is broken down so that we have a personalized plan and we know exactly where we're going and exactly how we're going to get there. It is not going to do us much good if I say my goal is to qualify to such and such. That's really not helping me get there. If anything, it's just adding pressure. And so with that bigger goal, we're going to break down smaller steps that we can do every single day that is going to ensure that we reach that goal. That's what you focus on. You focus on the things in your control that are completely manageable, knowing that they're going to lead you to the end goal without having that end goal be your sole focus and just causing you stress. Goal setting is so important and so necessary for every single person. That is the first thing I do with everybody. From there, it always looks different. So it completely depends on what the athlete's needs are. But I'll just give you some examples. So one of my favorites and a very foundational skill is cognitive reframing. Cognitive reframing is basically changing the way that you think, changing the way that you see situations, and learning how to use that to your advantage. So our thoughts are extremely powerful, and they have the power to make or break us, honestly. The more your brain hears something over and over and over, the more it's going to believe it. So if you have this negative thought that enters your mind every time you're about to compete, and it says, well, last time we did this, it didn't go so hot. Or, well, I hope nothing goes wrong. We'll see how this goes. Or anything that sounds remotely negative or doubting of yourself, your brain is slowly going to learn that that is what should happen. Okay, your brain believes what it hears over and over and over. Now, that is extremely powerful when used in the correct way, but it can also be detrimental, and it can cause a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress, and that leads to some not so hot performances. So cognitive reframing is huge. Getting rid of that negative talk, getting rid of anything that is dropping your confidence is super, super important. And it takes some time. These skills all take time and practice, Just like you've put in time and practice and years into training whatever sport, you also have to put the time and the practice and the training into your mental skills. You have your physical skills and you have your mental skills, right? And your brain learns by repetition. The more reps you get in at practice physically, the better you do. Same exact thing. The more reps you do training your mental skills, it works the same way. The better you get at the skills and the better you are, the more effective they are, and the bigger difference is going to occur in your performance. So cognitive reframing is so important. It is difficult, but it is absolutely essential. Another skill would be visualization. A lot of people have heard of visualization, but not a lot of people actually know how to do visualization to the full extent that it should be done. Lots of coaches will actually tell their athletes to visualize. You know, if it's before a competition or a game, they'll say, visualize what you're about to do, which is great. And they should be encouraging that. However, if you're not taught how to actually visualize properly, it's not going to do you that good. So, visualization really truly gives you extra practice. It is also in my opinion, the most important mental skill if an athlete is ever dealing with an injury. If you're physically unable to go to practice, you actually can truly maintain and or progress your skills just by visualizing. It also, it basically strengthens the neural pathways. So if you think about how you learn a skill, a physical skill, you're going to do it over and over and over and over. And eventually it's just muscle memory and you can do it without thinking. Well, what has happened is your brain has created a neural pathway to the rest of your body to say, hey, this is what we got to do to make this skill happen. The more you do it and the more reps you put in, the stronger that pathway gets and the faster that message can be sent. That is how you get that muscle memory, right? We love when that happens. So when you're visualizing, the same thing's occurring. Your brain is learning how to create that neural pathway. And the more it sees it over and over and over and over, the stronger it gets. Again, just like other skills, visualization has to be done correctly, right? Your cognitive reframing it can be detrimental if it's used in the wrong way. Your visualization is the same. If you are using visualization incorrectly, and let's just say, for example, I visualize myself failing some skill that I have, and I just completely mess it up. The more I visualize that, the more I am literally training my brain how to mess it up. So visualization is another very powerful skill that also takes a lot of practice to get very vivid, so to speak. So visualization is a really fun one. Attentional focus, obviously, it's important for all athletes to be able to focus on what they're doing, focus on what is important, find what is important, and then focus on that. So attentional focus would be another skill taught through mental coaching. There are so many relaxation skills, which is awesome because not every skill is going to be every athlete's favorite, right? Everyone needs options. There are so many relaxation skills, and everyone is always going to find at least one, if not more, that they absolutely click with. And those relaxation skills, as I'm sure you can imagine, help with decreasing nervousness, any anxiety, any stress. It helps them to focus better. If you need to calm down to focus because you're stressed, that's going to improve your focus also. It's going to improve the way that you're able to execute your skills. Physically, from a physical standpoint, when you are stressed, your muscles are tense. Your mental tension, so stress, nerves, frustration, anything, any kind of mental tension is directly linked to your physical tension, physical muscle tension. And if you address one of them, you're also going to simultaneously address the other. And that's what you want. If you are physically too tense to do whatever skills it is that you need to do to perform well, you're physically not going to be able to execute those skills simply because you are too tense, right? We have to be able to move in the way that we need to move. And if our body is holding us back, we can't do that. So there are relaxation skills that focus on relaxing the mind, which then in turn relaxes the muscles physically. And then there are also relaxation skills that do the opposite, where you focus on relaxing the muscles, which then in turn relaxes your mind. So you can come at it from both directions. I absolutely love relaxation skills. All of my athletes love relaxation skills, and a lot of them are very easy to do. There are some that are more complicated, and there are some that are super easy. And so because they're so easy and you can implement them immediately, they start seeing the difference quickly, and that's very encouraging to them. So relaxation skills would be another thing. It's always important to cover the different types of motivation. You can have intrinsic motivation, you can have extrinsic motivation. Most athletes have a mix of both. So your intrinsic motivation is going to be, I do my sport because I love it. It's fun. I like competing. I like the challenge. I like to learn new things. That's intrinsic motivation. It's coming from inside. And the extrinsic motivation, that would be, I want the trophy, and I want the medal, and I want a scholarship, and I want recognition. And if my parents said that if I do good, that we could get ice cream afterwards. None of those things are bad, right? We love all of those things. So 9 times out of 10, every athlete is going to have a mix of both of those types of motivation, but it's important to make sure that that intrinsic motivation is always stronger. One day, those extrinsic factors might not be there. And if that is the sole source of motivation for an athlete, where did their motivation go? Just because there's no trophy at the event? Then what? So it's important to be able to differentiate the different types of motivation, understand where their motivation is coming from, and strengthen their intrinsic motivation. Self-talk, positive self-talk. I do think that people kind of talk about this somewhat nowadays. At least I've seen it more, and people associate positive self-talk with, kind of a "you can do it" quote or something like that. And that's not bad. However, it has to be effective. And in order to be effective, you have to believe it. So if somebody is struggling with something and they think, well, I have to use my self-talk, so I'm going to tell myself that I can do it, but they don't actually believe it yet, it's not going to help, right? They can say it over and over and over and over. And over time, once their brain starts believing that because of the repetition, yeah, it's going to help. But initially, in that immediate time, they need something else that's going to be a little bit more effective. So there's many different ways to actually go about that positive self-talk. And within that, we also work through cue words. Cue words are very helpful. Most of my athletes absolutely love cue words, but there's some people where it's just not their favorite, and that's totally okay. This is why it's so important to have a coach working with you who can personalize what you're doing. I'm all for people searching for courses and books and things that they can do on their own to learn new skills and train their mind. but there is nothing that's going to compare to having an actual coach with you who is personalizing everything and working through things exactly as you're going through them. So it's so important because as things come up, we work through them, we personalize all of these skills to what you need them to be. And that involves tweaking some things every now and then. So anyways, one of the other really big skills that's kind of a skill and kind of not a skill is emotion control. The reason I say that it's kind of a skill and it's kind of not a skill is because it's actually how you are able to use all of your other skills in order to control your emotions. So you really have to be in control of your emotions for any sport that you are playing or competing in. If you're not in control of your emotions will override everything every time. And if you are upset about something, that's not going to end well. If you're super excited and hyped up, that sounds positive, right? But you have to be able to control that and in order to be able to perform well. So emotion control is really how do you use all of the skills that you have and recognize when you actually truly need to use them, what's going to be the best skill for this current situation. There's a lot of like connect the dots that goes on with emotion control. And the faster you get at recognizing, hey, I really need something right now to get me into the zone, to deal with this nervousness that I'm feeling, to overcome this fear of a skill that I'm working on. The quicker you're able to recognize that and the better you know how to apply skills to your situation, that emotion control is going to do wonders, whether it is in a practice situation or a competitive situation. So it's also important to cover different factors that can like trigger mental blocks. I believe that if you want to prevent mental blocks from forming, you're going to have a better shot at doing that if you know what things could possibly trigger them. So that is something else that I feel is important to cover within the skills that you are learning in and through mental coaching. So as you can see, these are all skills. There's so many skills. There's way more skills than I've even listed so far, but all of these skills take time and practice and repetition. So again, it's very, very applied. This is why I call everything mental coaching, or you might hear mental training, because you are truly training your mind for optimal performance. This is not a mental health treatment. This is not counseling, although there may be a counseling aspect to the sessions in the sense of the way the relationship between the coach and the athlete is formed and what can be discussed in the session. There might be a tad bit of a counseling aspect to it, but it's not counseling and it's not mental health treatment. It is truly an additional form of training for your sport. So that's a little bit about what is taught through mental coaching. All of that culminates to us creating a pre-competition routine. And so based on what that athlete needs, and again, this is why it's important to have things individualized based on what that athlete needs and what skills they really do well with and what skills help them the most and which skills they don't really love as much. We put together a pre-competition routine. And so what happens is before a game or before a competition, obviously no athlete is going to just walk out there and start competing without warming up. Nobody would do that, right? Or you'd get injured. So you're going to warm up. You're physically going to go do your warm up to warm your muscles up, warm your body up. And then you have your pre-competition routine that is already set, and that is your mental warm-up. So just as you get your body ready to go for competition, you also get your mind ready to go for competition. And so you know exactly what you're doing, your routine is set. And sometimes, as different situations arise, we might have to edit the routine. If there's something else going on or you're in a different kind of environment, you may require a different kind of pre-competition routine. And that's totally okay. We just make another one. So those pre-competition routines are very cool. And honestly, they really provide a sense of assurance and confidence to the athlete, because they know, hey, as long as I do this mental routine, I'm going to be ready. I'm going to be ready and able to get into the zone, and I'm going to perform well. And that in itself, knowing that they have come into the competition or the game or whatever prepared and ready to go with a plan, does wonders. And that also plays into their performance. So one thing I always like to be very upfront about is these skills must be practiced, right? So typically, the way that mental coaching sessions work, at least the way that I run them, is we would begin meeting once a week. The athlete and I would meet once a week for about an hour at a time. And after that session, the athlete has to go home, and for the whole following week, they have to practice the skills that we discussed. If you do not practice the skills, you don't get good at doing the skills. And if you don't get good at doing the skills don't help you, right? The same exact way your physical skills, if you do not practice them, you're not going to get good at your physical skills. And if you don't get good at your physical skills, you're not going to make progress in your sport, but you're also not going to perform the way that you want to, right? So there's a ton of overlap between the physical and the mental. So all of the skills must be practiced. That said, it is extremely important that the athlete wants to do mental coaching. This cannot be something that is forced on an athlete. This cannot be something that a coach says, hey, you need to go do mental coaching, and the athlete is like, absolutely not, I'm not doing that. Or a parent or friends or whoever. It cannot be forced, because if it's forced, they will not have the motivation and the dedication to practicing the skills, and they won't see the progress and they won't see the changes. So the athlete has to want to do the mental coaching. It is 100% fantastic if a coach says, hey, you should really go do this mental coaching, or a parent says, hey, I found this mental coach, do you want to go do this? And the athlete's like, yeah, I want to do that. That's okay. As long as the athlete is on board and they're willing to put the work in, they will see results. But it's all about the effort put into the skills. So on that note, because this is not something that is super commonly known, mental coaching is not commonly talked about yet, and a lot of people don't know what it is. Sometimes an athlete is kind of like, I don't know, that sounds weird, because they don't know what it is. And in those situations, it's always just a good idea to schedule an initial evaluation. And during that evaluation, in talking with the mental coach, they're able to understand, oh, this is what this is. That makes sense. And everybody who has ever come into my office hesitant and not wanting to do it because they thought it was weird and they thought their friends were going to judge them, or whatever the case may be, after the initial evaluation says, oh, well, of course, if I knew what that was, of course I would be incorporating it. every athlete would be incorporating it. So it's always a good idea to just go ahead and schedule the evaluation if there's kind of an iffiness to it. But all of that to say, the athlete has to want to be here. So like I said, I meet with athletes once a week starting out. And as we progress through things, we space out the sessions. So as they get really, really good and they're seeing progress, we're going to space the sessions out and go every other week. And then we're going to go every 3 or 4 weeks and space them out, because you don't want the athlete reliant on having a session in order to perform well. They don't need me to perform well, right? But they need to be confident in the skills that they've learned to perform well. So that is why I kind of taper off the sessions. That said, I do also have athletes who I've seen for years and they're doing great, but they simply just like the consistency and the routine. They don't rely on having the session in order to do well. They know that they have all of the capabilities, but they simply like the routine and the consistency of sessions. And that typically looks like a once every month kind of a meeting, and we're able to address things as they come up. So that is also super helpful. And then one other thing I also see often would be an athlete going through and learning skills and getting really good at doing them and using them in practice, and they do great. We take a break and then we pick back up a month or 2 before their season starts, and we carry sessions through every 2 or 3 weeks, depending on what their schedule looks like throughout the season, so that we can address things as they come up. We can set plans as we need to in the moment, instead of them having to try to figure it all out on their own. And sometimes, honestly, having that person who you can work through your sport skills and competitions and everything with, and having that confidentiality is helpful in itself. And that also helps the athlete. So having that space to come unleash everything that's been stressful or heavy, that helps them get through the season better too. So the way I like to think about it is there's the teaching phase of mental coaching where they're learning skills, they're practicing skills, they're learning how to use them well and get good at them. Then they kind of move into the implementation phase, and that's where they are working to put the skill into practice and at games and at competitions, and they're really implementing it into the sport environment. And then they move into that maintenance phase. And so that's kind of the 3 steps. It varies by person how long those phases are, because everybody is different and everyone has different needs and everyone learns differently. So I will also note that the minimum age, I get this question a lot, is how young can an athlete be to start? I typically do not see athletes younger than 10. 10 is pretty young. And with that, it really truly varies by the maturity level of the athlete, how well they're able to understand what we are talking about, and really wrap their head around the ideas and the concepts and the skills. So I do have 10-year-olds, and a sweet spot age has usually been around 12. That 12-year-old age has been really great for beginning mental coaching. And then from there on up, easy. Anybody can use it. Anybody can benefit from it. There's no age limit. Once they are ready and able to understand the skills. So generally speaking, that is around 10 minimum, 12 is the sweet spot. And this is any and all sports. So any and all sports, my personal background is actually in ballet. I was heavily involved in ballet my entire life growing up, and that was all I did. So I am not a pro at football and soccer and gymnastics and figure skating and soccer, but all of these skills apply to every sport, which is why it doesn't matter what sport you're in. We always apply the skills to your sport. And off of that, all of these skills apply to everyday life. So when you think about it, if you are in school and you're taking a test, you're performing on that test. If you are giving a presentation, you're performing in that presentation. It's your performance that you're getting graded on. If you have a job, you're performing in your career. And so because all of these skills are performance enhancement, yes, the main focus and topic of conversation in here is usually sports, but these skills also apply to anything outside of sports too. So these are lifelong skills that will always help an athlete, even long after they've retired their sport. So I think that was about all I wanted to share with you guys. Just a little bit of an overview of what mental coaching is, and hopefully that helps and makes sense. If you ever have any questions, I am more than happy to answer them. My website is championmindsetconsulting.com, and my email is Emily, EMILY, at championmindsetconsulting.com. I am always happy to answer questions, reach out to me, but hopefully that helps and you are able to start working on applying the mental side of your training into your physical. Bye, guys.